Really the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest, you mute them. Turning it up, these numbers are loud. Peeping this game from a nimbus is wild. Making it rain. While I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Hey, really the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest.
We're here. It's week 17. That's right. It's week 17. We've been working all off season. We've been grinding the waivers. We've been making the trade offers. We've been deciding our start sits every week. It's been a grind. I've had to take a couple days and even weeks off of different things to take care of what I needed to on my end. Make sure that my fantasy football life was right. My actual life was right. And things were going. And I've got good news to report. I've got 3 teams in some of the DK finals and those rounds. I've got a couple teams that are doing pretty well in the drafters fantasy. And unfortunately, my only team in underdog was eliminated last week, but it was a lot of fun. And we're going to be getting at it yet again in 2024. Lots of great things coming from this channel here in Best Bell Fantasy, and a lot more awesome things in 2024 that are going to be set for you, the listeners and the viewers. That's just going to continue to elevate this game. I'm going to bring on some great guests for 2024. There's going to be other people who are going to be jumping into Best Bell to be helping me expand this to become a bigger and more helpful platform for you to be an expert and winner here at Fantasy Football. So stick around. If you guys haven't subscribed yet on the YouTube, make sure you guys are smashing the subscribe button. It's the red button that says subscribe. And we're going to get into it. There's been a lot of action just today, and I want to take a little bit of time to talk about each of the quarterback benchings. And then, of course, I'll answer any start sit questions that you have for week 17, the most important of weeks, the weeks that we've been planning for months and months and months, if not since the schedule came out, right? Week 17 correlation was one of the big parts of my best ball grading this year, and how I valued and how I offered feedback for people who were trying to correlate week 17. I even talked with Mike Leone and Justin Herzig about week 17 correlations and their importance this past offseason. Both of those conversations can be found on the Player Profiler channel. So make sure you guys are checking that out too. I do a lot of work for Player Profiler. And yeah, you guys should check all that out tomorrow. In fact, my last Thursday night preview, Thursday night tailgate game is with Jack Kavanaugh of Player Profiler. Jack does a great job hosting Player Profiler today, so make sure you guys are checking him out there. But this is where you're going to find a lot of my original work and get more direct access to me. So make sure you guys are subscribing here on the YouTube channel if you have not yet already. bestballfantasy.com as well is the website. So let's first talk about this Russell Wilson saga. At first, we got notice that Russell Wilson was going to be benched for the remaining 2 games. And initially, the report from Ian Rappaport and others was that Russell Wilson is going to be benched for financial reasons. And then within an hour, it came out that Russell Wilson was in fact not being benched for financial reasons, but instead was being benched for football, whatever that means. Here's the thing is, when these reports come out initially, that's probably the truth. And Rappaport was probably reporting what was true. And then someone from the Denver Broncos organization came out and said, this actually looks bad and it could reveal some ugly things. And I don't know if our PR department's ready to handle that. Instead, it's Russell Wilson who's getting benched, and now the narrative is shifted that it wasn't for financial reasons, it was for football reasons, which Diana Rossini now has come out and reported just a few minutes ago that these discussions have happened with Russ since the middle of this year, and since October, of Russ not playing for the remainder of the season. And if you are unfamiliar with the situation, essentially how Russ Wilson's contract is set up, if he does not pass his physical in the spring of 2024, then he's guaranteed not only the money for 2024, which ends up being more than $30 million, but also an additional more than $30 million in 2025. So there's a significant amount of financial flexibility that the team is banking on by not playing him. And this is a situation where I don't anticipate Russell Wilson playing another snap for the Denver Broncos. It just doesn't make sense with how Sean Payton has wanted to run this team. Sean Payton's initial lack of vibing with Russell Wilson. We remember the narrative at the beginning of the season where it was Russell Wilson's trainer who wasn't even allowed to be in the places where he was with the previous regime. And so there are concerns that there's meshing, there's chemistry issues, and we saw some losing at the start of the season. And then Russ started turning things around, and we saw a pretty impressive touchdown to interception ratio. Russ was able to look a lot better this year and connect with Cortland Sutton for touchdowns. It was obviously a significant improvement, but not running the offense how Sean Payton wants it. So there's some jokes now flying around Twitter that maybe it's Taysom Hill who's going to be the new Broncos quarterback in 2024. And that's certainly a possibility. Taysom Hill ending up on the Denver Broncos would not be the wildest thing to happen in 2024, at least how I anticipate it. It also makes sense that the Saints want to move on from Taysom Hill, the player who has this bloated contract anyway, and the Saints are so above the salary cap. They're like $100 million, 80 or $100 million over the salary cap. It's outrageous, it's outlandish. And seeing if Taysom Hill can move on to a different place, maybe that's going to be a viable option. Nevertheless, the issue is that Russ is probably not going to play another snap for the Denver Broncos, which on a micro scale, we're talking about week 17. This is a smash matchup between the Denver Broncos and the Los Angeles Chargers. I had Chargers Broncos stacks set up since April, since May, since the schedule came out. And I had one team with both Russell Wilson and Justin Herbert. We know Herbert's out for the season, and now Russ isn't going to play. That team's absolutely dead. But the week 17 stacking is something that we need to keep these situations now in mind, with Matt Ryan now not have played at the end of the season, with Derek Carr now having not played last season, with Russell Wilson now not playing at the end of the season. These are the types of things, the wrinkles, the 1% edges that can perhaps move us on into week 17 victories in the best ball streets or not. So we need to be very cautious about how we're approaching contract situations. This is becoming much more of a wrinkle, especially for veteran starting quarterbacks on bloated contracts. We can think of a couple examples that would happen for next year. I think if the Jets are eliminated, we could see Aaron Rodgers. That could be a situation. Deshaun Watson would be in that type of situation. I believe it's a 4-year deal, $230 million. And so the reality is that's the end of the third year for Deshaun Watson. It's the end of Rodgers' second year. There are teams that maybe just would want to move on from them if they're not in playoff contention. So those are just some ideas, and maybe we'll dig deeper and we'll find out more information in the offseason about other quarterback contract situations. But for right now, this is a situation for Denver and for Russell Wilson that seems to be irreconcilable. Diana Rossini even just reported right now that the Broncos are expected to waive Russell Wilson when it comes time in March. So they're just cutting $30 million in dead cap. They're just going to take the hit. so be it. And Jarrett Stidham, on a micro scale, Jarrett Stidham is going to start week 17 against the Chargers. It's a good matchup. We've seen blow up performances from Jarrett Stidham, but we've also seen in almost every other instance, aside from that one game, the one fluke game against San Francisco last year where Jarrett Stidham threw for over 300 yards, Devontae Adams had a big game. We've seen Jarrett Stidham. We've seen enough. He has less than a 63 PFF passer grade through 4 seasons, 2 with the Patriots, 1 with the Raiders, and then this year with the Denver Broncos. He's a nothing burger. I still don't understand what Sean Payton sees in Jarrett Stidham. He's not shown anything at the professional level that is consistent. And so my concern is that the Denver Broncos are going to be making a draft pick at quarterback, and their pick may not be good enough to snag one of the top quarterback prospects, or they're going to have to trade up again with what assets after trading for Russell Wilson. So nevertheless, it's disaster zone in Denver. It's not good. This is one of those organizations that has swung and missed ever since Peyton Manning, ever since those Super Bowls. And so looking forward, it's probably going to be a rookie competing with Taysom Hill, who might be brought in as a free agent. It may be Jarrett Stidham sticks around. It's going to be gross. It's going to be disgusting. And so there, with all that uncertainty, Denver's probably not a team that I want to target when it comes to Best Ball 2024. The ambiguity is just too great. No, I don't think I want to be targeting many Denver Broncos. And even if you're like, what about Taysom Hill? Sure, in the underdog streets where I think he's going to be tight end, but definitely not in the FFPC streets where if he has any significant work, especially in Denver, or if he still re-signs with the Saints, then he's going to be a quarterback and therefore useless in the FFPC streets when it comes to best ball or even be able to start him with confidence. So that's how I'm viewing this Denver Broncos situation. In the microcosm, of course, it's a decent matchup still against the LA Chargers and Easton Stick. Yeah, I'm not looking to stream Jarrett Stidham. I'd probably rank him outside of my top 20 of quarterbacks for the week. My initial rankings put Jarrett Stidham definitely outside the top 20. I haven't updated for the Russell Wilson benching yet, but it's gross. It's going to be gross. I'm not here for that. We'll flip the page to the New York Giants. Tommy DeVito is getting benched as well in favor of Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor, the veteran quarterback who played for Los Angeles Chargers. He played for the Cleveland Browns, played for the Buffalo Bills. And we've seen Tyrod Taylor target heavily the running backs and the tight ends. And who is that good for? It's good for Darren Waller, and it's good for Saquon Barkley. In particular, this is an interesting matchup because the Rams give up a lot of fantasy points to the tight end position. And so I think Darren Waller, who narrowly missed 2 touchdowns in Week 16's game, is set up for a big game against the LA Rams. I initially will have Darren Waller in my top 10 of tight ends for this week. Right now, tentatively a placeholder at 14th if you go to bestballfantasy.com, but that's going to be updated here by the end of tomorrow. And so check that out. Bestballfantasy.com is where I have my rankings. Right now I'm 35th among all rankers overall. And that's really exciting because I've worked really, really hard on my rankings this year. I've improved from 50th overall to now 35th, 49th in quarterback, 37th in running back, 26th in wide receiver, and 55th in tight end, 24th in DST rankings. I've worked really hard on those. So check out the rankings. I'll have those updated by the end of the day tomorrow. But I anticipate Waller will be a top 10 tight end for me. You're going to start Waller over your Tucker Crafts of the world. You'll start him over Isaiah Likely. I mean, it's going to be hard to start him over Evan Ingram, but I think you can start him over Sam Laporta. You'll definitely start him over Dalton Kincaid. So that's the threshold, I think, for Darren Waller. So there we go. All right, before we get into more of the quarterback carousel, Leo Nunez jumps in from YouTube. Shout out to you, Leo. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. If you like the content, you guys have found this helpful, make sure you're subscribing to my Twitter page. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the YouTube channel. I appreciate y'all doing that. Spears, Pickens, or KJ Osborne. I think Osborne is set up for a pretty good week this week. I like all of these guys. Let's pull up the flex rankings. I think that'll be the best way to at least get an initial vibe for all of them. Spears I have at 94th in the flex rankings. Osborne is at 82nd, and Pickens is at 60th. So I would rank them Pickens and then Osborne and then Spears. Here's the thing is if Mitchell Trubisky or Mason Rudolph are the quarterbacks, which, hey, Mason Rudolph is going to be the quarterback in week 17 per head coach Mike Tomlin. We saw how Mason Rudolph was trying to get the win with George Pickens, and that's by throwing the ball down the field. Pickens in the losses and in his bad games is stuck running stupid routes close to the line of scrimmage. That's not how he as the dog eats. He eats downfield. He wants to fight for contested catches. He likes to make and is good at making those toe tapping sideline catches. He's able to make spectacular plays. At least get a quarterback who's giving him a chance to do that. So definitely George Pickens. And this is not just, hey, he's coming off this massive performance where he had 2 60-plus yard touchdowns and broke all of fantasy, blah, blah, blah. Like George Pickens last year had a 40% flex rate in the half-point PPR streets, which was a top 24 rate. Like he was pretty good last year, high floor. But this season, we've seen a higher ceiling. We've seen bigger ceilings. And with Mason Rudolph, he's able to just throw the ball up, get the ball down the field. And this Seattle defense, as like it's been vulnerable here and there. We've seen the secondary be pretty tough, and they've played gritty, and they've also lost parts of their secondary. Witherspoon is respectable, absolutely. But you put the dog, George Pickens, out there deep, and you're going to get 1 or 2 big plays. So whether they go for touchdowns or not, Pickens is definitely the big play waiting to happen. I like Pickens this week. His ceiling is just so much higher than Osborne or Spears. Spears has a nice floor as well. If you want 8 PPR fantasy points, fine. Spears is probably the safe play. Osborne is boom or bust, similar to Pickens, but Pickens just a higher ceiling with his pedigree and profile. Okay, Spud, shout out to you. Thank you for your $2 for all that. This is great. I am honored that you would support this channel. We've got some defense recommendations. Yeah, I'll pull up the DST rankings here. He has Cowboys, Raiders, or Broncos. The Broncos right now are my DST 9 facing the LA Chargers. The Raiders, on the other hand, are down at 17 against Indy. The Colts expect Michael Pittman back. Jonathan Taylor is also healthy. So this is an Indy team that is looking pretty good. And then, we mentioned Denver at 9. Dallas at 10 tentatively. So coin flip between Denver and Dallas, but I prefer, let's look at the over-unders for the week. And this may be a defining moment for you because the Cowboys face the Detroit Lions. And this is in Dallas. The over-under for this game is 53 points. 53. And while Dallas is favored by 6 points, that's going to be a high-scoring game in a dome between 2 teams who are very hungry for establishing a strong pattern of winning going into the playoffs because both teams are playoff bound. So I think Dallas versus Detroit, a high-scoring game, Week 17. 100% of my finals teams have Amon-Ra CeeDee Lamb correlations. And so the Cowboys I'm avoiding because of this really high game total. Like even if you get 2 interceptions and a fumble, the Detroit Lions are going to be disciplined enough to make adjustments even at halftime. So I don't think that we're going to see a ton of turnovers. We may see 1 or 2, but it's not going to be enough for us to move the needle. Whereas the Denver Broncos versus the Indianapolis Colts, right? That over under is 10 points less. All right. 10 points less. And the Broncos take on the Chargers, right? Where is that one? Yeah, the over-under for that game is 37.5. And the Broncos are favored by 3.5 at home. Yeah, give me the Broncos much more comfortably than what the coin flip may indicate in the rankings. Yeah, I do have the Broncos the highest, but I think it's a lot more firm than what my initial rankings are at. The over-under for this game is 37.5. It's going to be a low-scoring game. You're going to see Easton Stick have turnovers. You're going to see turnovers actually on both sides. And so Denver, even though they're favored at home, there's not going to be a lot of scoring. There's going to be some sacks, interceptions, fumbles. So give me the Broncos in that type of a game environment where I anticipate a lot of punting. Yeah, it's ugly. So thank you, Spud 2009. And then the last quarterback that we got news about today. So Tommy DeVito benched, Russell Wilson benched, Sam Howell also benched in this Week 17 matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. This is not like a move that makes much sense other than Ron Rivera playing for pride, because Jacoby Brissett is your veteran quarterback who is going to put the Washington Commanders in a better position to win the game against the San Francisco 49ers. So this is a play for pride. Washington is not in a position to be winning this game. Like looking at this is a Sunday, December 31st. Washington is 12.5 point underdogs at home. The over-under for this game is 50 points. Yikes. Even with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, that may actually put him onto mid quarterback 2 streaming, given I didn't realize that over-under was going to be that high. But Sam Howell's benched. He was taking too many sacks. He was holding on the ball too long. He was throwing a lot of interceptions. 8 interceptions over the last 5 games is not going to get it done for the Commanders. And I think the evaluation is done on Sam Howell. We know what we're going to get with him, and that's going to be a solid career backup who's got a little bit of spark and who can keep up with high-scoring teams. And I'm not sure that that's what Washington as a team wants to identify as. They don't want to get into shootouts. They're not equipped to do like Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. Those are not players that can get you into massive shootouts. They're not in the same plane as a Jamar Chase T. Higgins or a DK Metcalf, JSN, and Tyler Lockett, right? They just don't have the same pedigree. And so to have a quarterback who's also not equipped to be able to do that's not going to work. We know who Sam Howell is. So Washington makes a befuddling move of playing the more professionally ready NFL quarterback. Yeah, that is a Ron is writing his ticket out of here. He's giving one last goodbye, and it's a gift of a worse draft pick or potentially worse draft pick. For those who are in the betting streets, this is a telltale sign of we want to be betting these types of things. We want to bet Washington to cover, though. Whenever it's more than double digits at home that the home team is dogs in, like betting the spread is usually pretty lucrative. There's a lot of data to suggest that. It's worked earlier in the season. You don't find it very often in the wild, but when you do, like Washington, 12.5 point underdogs at home to San Francisco, like Washington's got enough to play with. And while San Francisco is motivated, we could see some garbage time at the end where this game becomes a 10-point game as we go near the end. So Sam Howell is benched. His dynasty value is nil pretty much because we know that Washington is going to be in the quarterback market this year, whether it is through the draft or free agency. But that's what I'm working through. There you go. All right, Jelly of the Month. We got a quarterback question. Are we going to go with Baker Mayfield or we're going to go with Jordan Love? And Jordan Love's been one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, how can we move away from him? Baker Mayfield, though, gets New Orleans without Marshawn Lattimore, shadowing Mike Evans. And this game is at home for Tampa, who is playing for more than just pride. Baker Mayfield is playing for his job for next year, and not in a bad way. Like, Baker Mayfield's playing for an extension, which is wild. That Baker Mayfield was almost written out of the league. He was shipped off to Carolina by Cleveland, and then Carolina cut him last year. And then off the street, Baker Mayfield, after just a couple days, won his first game with the Rams and come behind fashion. And then Stafford comes back, and so Baker signs as a free agent with Tampa, and there's a quarterback competition between Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask, and we knew it was Baker Mayfield all along. But Baker is playing so well as of late, and he's getting the ball to his guys like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, getting their touchdowns and the yards, especially in the Week 16 game. Godwin was a beast, and Evans had 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, Baker Mayfield, I think, is still a great play. Jordan Love gets Minnesota. Minnesota is a really tough defense now. That's difficult. It's at Minnesota, so in a dome is good. And the other good news is Jaden Reed is expected back. The bad news is Christian Watson is not expected to play in Week 17, so do not be expecting, based on the practice reports I've been seeing, I don't expect Christian Watson to play this week. Jordan Love loves to take shots down the field. Sometimes he hits, sometimes he misses. I think it'll be better than last week, but because Carolina almost made their way back in that game. But Baker Mayfield is playing for so much more, and he's got better weapons in a game that could turn into a little bit of a shootout. Also, for what it's worth, the home games for Mike Evans this year, 3 of his games at home this year, 130 or more receiving yards. Like, dude goes off at home, and Baker Mayfield likes to put on a show. So I'm going with Baker Mayfield this week. I have Mayfield ranked tentatively as my 10th quarterback on the week, Jordan Love at 15th. So there is a distinction between the two. Jelly of the month, other league DST question. All right, let me pull up the DST rankings. Broncos, Jacksonville, or Jets? Ooh, so I mentioned the Broncos are a pretty good matchup this week, given the game environment, the low over-under. Easton Stick is the quarterback. They're not going to be pushing the ball to create a shootout scenario. The Jets, though, I have at 4th this week against Cleveland. You know, they've got Joe Flacco, who threw a couple interceptions in the game against Houston. He's willing to just chuck the ball up. We've also got questionable Amari Cooper going into this game. There's no indication that Cooper will miss this game. We expect that he'll play, but the fact that he may be limited in any capacity, plus Joe Flacco facing a tough Jets secondary, where Flacco's been playing YOLO pretty much since he's been there. He leads, over the last 4 weeks, Joe Flacco leads the entire NFL among all quarterbacks in passing yards. It's wild stuff. But I think that gets snuffed out a little bit here tomorrow. Yeah, the other thing is there's the revenge game narrative, right? It's Joe Flacco plus Elijah Moore revenge game. But still, objectively, Jets are my 4th DST as of right now. Jacksonville down at 13th, Broncos at 9. I think Broncos end up being a little bit higher when the dust settles and we get closer to start of game time. But yeah, I think it's clearly the Jets. Okay. Gooner Boy, shout out to you. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. Okay. Do I go Zamir White if Jacobs can't go over Achane? Looking to start both Zeke and Zamir over Achane if that's the case. Yeah, you're going to start Ezekiel Elliott. This is wild stuff. I'm glad you brought up Ezekiel Elliott because let's look at his game logs. It's something out of the Twilight Zone. You wouldn't expect this from Ezekiel Elliott, but you would expect it from the New England running back. Ramondre Stevenson officially was placed on IR earlier this week. So we're expecting Ezekiel Elliott to continue to handle 70, 90, 85, 87% of the snaps. Last week, week 16 against Denver, 11 targets. The week before, 6 targets against Kansas City. Week before that, 8 targets against Pittsburgh. The week before that, 5 targets against the Chargers. Yeah, Zeke, at worst, is a running back 2, mid-pack, like running back 18. That's his floor, given the touches that he will get in New England. His ceiling is what we've seen 2 of the last 3 weeks. We saw the running back 1 overall performance week 14 against Pittsburgh, and then 21 more PPR fantasy points against Denver. Yeah, that's the type of ceiling we're looking at for Ezekiel Elliott. So mid-pack running back 2 is his floor, barring injury, because he's playing 75 to 95% of the snaps. He's not leaving the field, partly because he can catch the ball in the backfield, partly because he's a kick butt pass blocker, and partly because he's just going to be the guy who's getting the ball. So yeah, you're starting Zeke as a top 10 running back for this week, as wild as that sounds, against a Buffalo defense that is pretty tough. And then your question is, okay, am I going to go Zamir White over Achane, assuming Jacobs does not go? And Antonio Pierce, the coach, is going to continue to run the ball down teams' throats. That's what it is. That's what's going to happen. And so for the Vegas Raiders, who take on the Indianapolis Colts week 17, I don't see why Antonio Pierce is going to move away from that. So he's going to get massive volume. The floor is really scary for Achane. We've seen what the ceiling is, but Zamir White was having a mediocre day until he burst off 3 big double-digit 10-plus yard runs. One of them went for 44 yards in the third or fourth quarter. And so Zamir White is going to get the volume. That's what we want. He's not going to get a lot out of the backfield as a pass catcher, but he's going to get rushing work, and he's going to get goal line work. We saw him fall into the end zone earlier. And so Zamir White plus Zeke Elliott, I think you do start over Achane this week. I know that Jalen Waddle is out, but Achane has been dealing with this toe injury too that has been limiting his touches. He only had, I think, 10 touches this past week. He had 14 each of the previous weeks, which is fine. 14 touches is great, but there's no reason for the Dolphins to move away from Raheem Mostert in a big time game. This Baltimore-Miami game at the end of the season could turn into one of the bigger shootouts. And like looking at the spreads and over-unders for this week, it's Baltimore hosting Miami. The over-under is 47. Yeah, we want to be in on that game. Baltimore is favored by 3.5 at home. And if there's going to be big time plays, it's more likely that it's going to be Raheem Mostert in the backfield. And we're not going to see a lot of garbage time. Like the Ravens are not built to be blown out. They've got good defenders who will limit big plays. And with Jalen Waddle out, there's a concentration of, okay, we're going to be able to double team Tyreek Hill. Okay, we're going to be able to stuff the run. And the Baltimore Ravens are talented everywhere on defense. And so I think that Zamir White plus Zeke is the way to go here. All right. I've been crushing it so far. You guys have been crushing it. It's week 17. If you like the content and found this helpful, you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button. If you're watching on the X machine or Twitter, as they call it. Make sure you guys subscribe to me on Twitter at FFStalder for more great content. As I said earlier in the podcast, I'm going to be bringing some amazing stuff to you this off season. I've got a few projects in mind, and I want to bring that all to you because y'all deserve it. You've been a great community for me and for the other people in this community. So thank you for tuning in, for sharing your fantasy insights, for asking your questions, for making this community a great place to be. Spud 2009 asked another question. Trying to figure out my flex play. You got Pickens, Brandon Cooks, Tazi Spears, KJ Osborne, or Beckham, hoping for a safe floor but higher upside. Yes, Spears is a nice floor guy. Like he's gonna get a lot of non-Derrick Henry touches, and with Treylon Burks struggling, DeAndre Hopkins only getting 2 catches for 20 yards this past game. Can I just take a second and just vent a little bit? I could have won another $1,200 if DeAndre Hopkins or Devontae Adams scored more than 7.8 points in PPR. Like either one, because it was best ball. And so I had Rondell Moore, who had scored, I think it was 5.6 or 5.8 fantasy points. And I just needed 2 more points from one of those 2 guys. And it didn't happen. So grumble, not drafting DeAndre Hopkins again. Sorry. It's just yikes. It's so bad. But this gives opportunity for a guy like Spears in this offense because he's close to the line of scrimmage. Ryan Tannehill's just going to dump it off. It's okay. Hopkins is not what he used to be. And that's okay for his career arc. We just know what he is, and it's not going to be the difference maker that he once was. But now, looking at Tazi Spears, we've seen the game logs. Like week 16, he had 5 receptions, 67 total yards, 6 targets. Week 14, 3 weeks ago, 6 receptions, 118 total yards on 8 targets. He only has 1 total touchdown on the year, despite the fact that Tazi Spears is number 9 among all running backs in target share. Number 9. He's number 8 among all running backs in yards per touch. This is a really efficient running back who, if you're trying to acquire, like if you're out of it for this year and you need some dynasty starts for next year, Tazi Spears, he's got no ACLs. He's got nothing in his knee. Go ahead, get yourself some Tazi Spears. He is a buy. Because even for fantasy managers who have been starting him this year, they haven't realized his full potential. And we know what his full potential could be because we see what Derrick Henry is doing alongside Spears and still putting up a top 15 season among running backs. And Spears himself, maybe running back 40 in fantasy points per game, but 45 receptions and 4.7 yards per carry. This is very, very good. We're happy with what Tazi Spears has done so far. So I expect him to be a floor play, a pretty safe play. If I'm looking for a guy, Spud 2009, I like Tazi Spears this week. All right, Gooner Boy back at it. Chandler, Chuba, or Zamir if Jacobs can't go. Yeah, so I'll be doing another update of my rankings here tomorrow, but my initial just placeholder rankings have Chandler at 18 this week. Chuba, why is Hubbard not showing up? Hubbard showing up at 22, so Chandler over Hubbard. And then Zamir, we'll see if Jacobs is able to play. We'll see if Jacobs plays or not. I have Zamir tentatively at 45, but if he doesn't go, he probably goes ahead of Chandler. We've seen the floor for Ty Chandler, and it's pretty bad. Yeah, and so I probably would put Zamir over Ty Chandler if Jacobs doesn't go. So it'd probably go Zamir, assuming Jacobs can't go, and then Chandler, and then Chuba. Aaron Robarge, looking for a flex PPR. We got Garrett Wilson. We got JSN. Zay Flowers. Zamir White, or Achane. So looking at my flex rankings, Achane's at 45 right now in the flex rankings. Jackson Smith and Jigba is at 74. Garrett Wilson is at 59. Flowers is at 56. I feel like that's a little low for Flowers, so I may have to take another look at that. Just in picking it out, probably Flowers in a full PPR, even if he's questionable. Every week that I try to rank him low, Zay Flowers responds with an 11 target game and 8 receptions, 60 yards and touchdown, right? That's just Zay Flowers. I'm going to love drafting so much more Zay Flowers this coming year. I don't think there's going to be a price that's too expensive for Zay Flowers. I'm not saying, he's going to be first round pick or anything like that, but I think wherever he's going to be drafted in the 5th round, 6th round, I think that's going to be great. I think it's going to be great value for Zay Flowers. I'm going to love drafting some Zay Flowers. So give me more Zay. As I like to say, is it better to Zay too much than not Zay what you need to Zay? Lewis Light. Question of the day. Do we trust Stephon Diggs or not for our championship game? Oh, man. Yeah, this brings up some hurt, right? We're very hurt by Stephon Diggs, because if we look at like his game logs, it's pretty clear that he has these streaks in him that are concerning, right? In previous seasons, we've seen streaks of non-100 yard receiving games. I put a tweet out a couple days ago where I said Stephon Diggs went on a streak of 7 straight games of less than 100 receiving yards just last season. And then a streak of 8 games of less than 100 receiving yards in 2021, so the season before. And then a streak of 11 straight games without 100 receiving yards in 2017, and another streak of 10 games in 2015. He is now in the midst of a 9-game streak in 2023. We've seen him extend into 10 and 11 games in his career. Now, is this matchup good against New England? Kinda. We've seen historically Stephon Diggs absolutely annihilate New England in previous matchups, like for sure. And my tentative rankings have Stephon Diggs all the way down at wide receiver 14. So confident, but you're probably still going to start him. Like, I have Rashee Rice, I have Puka Nacua, I have Mike Evans, Amon-Ra, you're starting Tyreek, CD Lamb. Like, you're starting those types over Stephon Diggs. But where it gets dicey is, are you starting Michael Pittman or Stephon Diggs? And I think that Michael Pittman's probably the safer play if he's active and available. Yeah. I mean, I'm still starting Diggs over Amari Cooper, who gets the Jets. I'm still starting Diggs over T. Higgins as they get Kansas City. Kansas City's defense is really stingy. But Zay Flowers, that's an interesting one. That is a very interesting one. That's probably the threshold. That's where it becomes a coin flip scenario. Yeah. So trust is tough, especially when it gets to the championship, and he's burnt us. He's burnt us so badly. All right, Gooner Boy back at it. Kraft, Everett, Pitts. Need one. Should I monitor Musgrave and Parham status, or just roll with Pitts' hot hand? Problem with Pitts is that you can't really call the hot hand. Like, how hot can his hand get? I like, of those 3, I like Gerald Everett this week. I've talked about the Denver Broncos being a very plus matchup, a top 5 matchup against tight ends. The Broncos with Surtain are able to shut down one cornerback with one wide receiver with their cornerbacks. But that means that the tight ends are funneled targets. And we've seen Gerald Everett get hyper targeted by Easton Stick. So setting up a pattern of behavior from the quarterback in a plus matchup that's historically looked good for tight ends. I like Gerald Everett this week. I have Everett ranked over Kyle Pitts, and when the dust settles, I'll have Gerald Everett over Tucker Kraft, especially given that Musgrave is practicing this week. So that's what I'm looking at. And like Tucker Kraft is not a top 12 tight end, especially given that Musgrave is practicing right now and has a chance to play. I'm not saying that he will, but he is practicing, and this is definitely something that we're going to be monitoring. Okay, Gunnar Boy says never play Kincaid again. Yeah, at least as long as Dawson Knox is out there. That's going to be the key, is as long as Dawson Knox is on this team, Kincaid is nothing more than a role player that gets about 30 yards, 3 catches. Maybe he has touchdown upside. That's a possibility. But Kincaid was way overpriced in the drafts this year. I don't think people were taking into consideration the reality that the Bills did invest heavily in Dawson Knox and that they were going to continue to use him. So sorry, this was one of those scenarios where we should have been more cautious in a similar scenario as Arthur Smith in the Atlanta Falcons. It's another reason why. So I was fading Dalton Kincaid. I was fading Bijan Robinson this year, not because I don't like their talent. I love their talent. I think they're, in a vacuum, Pro Bowl players, and Bijan could set records. Problem is, the coaching staff can limit. It's the fallacy of rational coaching that, of course, if they get these players on this team, that they're going to use them to the full extent and they're going to optimize them. It's the Arthur Smith corollary, right? That's just the reality. We need to see some shifts in personnel for Dalton Kincaid to be a useful fantasy piece for us. He's a player I'm out on until we see that shift. In a similar way, until Arthur Smith leaves or Tyler Algier leaves or is injured, like long-term, like I don't wish that, but that's what it would take, is Bijan Robinson getting the majority of the touches that Tyler Algier now just doesn't get. Because Algier's had a couple spike weeks this year that have definitely eaten into Bijan Robinson. Cordell Patterson as well, getting goofy touchdowns, whatnot. Nevertheless, never playing Kincaid again until we see personnel changes. That's how you need to react to this. I'm just DVN. Shout out to you. Thanks for tuning in from Twitch. Aaron Robarge, agree. Everett looks like the number one with Allen out. Yeah, Keenan Allen's out for the remainder of the season. So it looks like Gerald Everett is going to be hyper-targeted yet again. I like Gerald Everett in a plus matchup against the Denver defense. Yeah, give me Gerald Everett. Jelly of the month, doing waivers, best option, probably block opponent who needs a DST and a kicker. Should I grab Ravens DST or Bucker as the block? Yeah, so the Ravens DST, as much as this game is a 47 over-under, Tua is dealing with, he's questionable right now with a hand injury and some other injuries. So I think the Ravens do have a little bit more upside to cause some turnovers. We could see a 2-interception game. The Ravens just intercepted the 49ers quarterbacks 5 times. So there is DST upside. If you're getting multiple interceptions, there's a chance for a pick 6. So I think the better block is to pick up the Ravens, who have more upside. The Chiefs, on the other hand, remember, Kansas City is getting Cincinnati. And there's going to be more touchdowns scored than field goals. So I anticipate that the Ravens DST has more upside than Butker does. So that's how I'd handle that. All right, cool beans. Sweet. I appreciate all of you tuning in. This has been a lot of fun hanging out with y'all. It's 11:30 on a Wednesday. You wake up and you're like, what day is it? Because it's the couple days between Christmas and New Year's. And Everyone's off. I'm off. And finally, my brain is like reset. And now that we're into week 17, so I appreciate all of it. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with y'all throughout this season, and stick around. Don't unsubscribe in the offseason. I'm going to be bringing you some pretty awesome content. We're going to do some mock drafts. We're going to talk about rookies. I'm going to bring on some just smarter people than me. We're going to talk fantasy. We're going to talk about prospects. We're going to talk about evaluation. We're going to do rookie mock drafts. There's going to be real NFL mock drafts. There's going to be all the things. I'm really excited to bring you for this year. Make sure you guys are subscribed on the YouTube channel. Smash the red subscribe button. I appreciate all of you doing that. We have worked very hard this year to bring an amazing community together. So thank you. We've got a couple more questions, and then we're going to call it for the night. Lewis Light, thanks for the advice. Funny enough, my current lineup is Tyreek, Pittman, and Diggs at flex. At bench, I have Reed, who's been amazing. Yeah, Jaden Reed has been great. And Tazi Spears. Yeah, Reed did practice today, but still questionable. He is trending toward playing. This is one of those scenarios where I'd say still start Stephon Diggs over Jaden Reed, because Reed is coming off the injury and he can just go right back on out. Because Diggs' potential upside is just too high. Reed, as much as we love Jaden Reed, and he's been hitting wide receiver 8, wide receiver 11, wide receiver 12, wide receiver 18 on weeks, that's good. Let's not bat two eyes about it. But Stephon Diggs has wide receiver 1 overall and a week upside. Jaden Reed does not have that in his range of outcomes. So I would still go Diggs and over Reed and Spears. That's how I'd handle it. All right, Robarge finishes off with a DST question for the week. Baltimore or Vegas? Yeah, I've got Baltimore at 8 right now. I've got the Vegas Raiders down at 17. So give me Baltimore. All right, y'all. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you guys are subscribed on the YouTube channel. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at FFStalder on the X Machine. Bring you all the great content. And until next time, everyone, good luck in week 17 of the 2023 season.
I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still.